So, this next story is a story from China folklore. This is a story about a farmer that came from the country to sell his pears in the marketplace. They were very juicy, fragrant pears, and his sales were actually booming through the roof. But when a Taoist priest wearing a tattered, scarred, and coarse cotton clothed robe, or his clothes are like very tattered and disoriented, he appeared at the businessman's wagon and begged for some of the fruit. The farmer kind of just shooed him away, and the priest refused to leave. So the farmer's voice got very high. It rose. He started screaming at the top of his lungs, and he began to curse with all kinds of profanity. So the priest said, "Look, your wagon holds hundreds of pears, and I'm just asking for one, just one. That's not even a loss for you, sir. And why are you so angry?" So the people around at the marketplace tried to talk the farmer into maybe just giving this priest maybe even one of the bruised pears just to get rid of them. But the farmer was so indignant, he refused at all costs. So at last, the guard at the marketplace saw the crowd getting, a little restless, and there was kind of like an uproar developing. Things were getting out of hand. And so he put a few of his coins up for a piece of fruit. He threw it at the priest. So the priest thanked the guard as he kind of clasped his hands above his head in thanks. And then he turned around to the crowd and said, "We who have left the world find man's greed hard to understand." Then he said, "Let me offer some choice pears for all of you good people." Someone shouted from the crowd, "Now that you have your pear, why don't you eat it?" But the priest replied, "All I needed was a seed for planting." So he held the pear in both of his hands and he gobbled it up. Then he took the shovel off of his back that he was carrying and he dug several inches down into the dirt. And then he took the seed from the pear that he had eaten and he placed it in the hole, and then he covered it with dirt, with earth. The priest then looked around and asked someone to bring him some hot water. And so there was someone that was standing by in the crowd who was enjoying all of this drama and excitement. He ran to get some water from a nearby shop. And so the priest took the water and poured it over the seed he had planted. Everybody was silent and they were watching in eagerness to find out what was happening. And what do you know? This tiny little shoot appeared out of the ground. Steadily, it increased in size until it became this full-grown tree with twigs and leaves. It was just growing profusely, just out of control. So in a quick burst of a moment, it burst into bloom, and then fruit appeared. All of a sudden, masses of large, luscious pears filled its branches. So the priest took these pears and plucked them off of the tree and began passing them out to the crowd. And then shortly after the fruit was all gone, he took his shovel and he began to chop at the base of the tree. Ding, ding, right? Kept hitting it The blows rang out in the air until finally this tree fell to the ground. And so the priest took the upper part of the tree onto his shoulders, and he departed with this very assured energy, untroubled energy. Now, during all of this, this farmer, that farmer that had the truck full of pears, had been a part of the crowd, gaping with his neck outstretched, and to the point where he even forgot about his own business, watching the priest so closely. But now that the priest was gone, the farmer noticed that his wagon was empty. And then he began to think, and the suspicion came over him that this was his pears that was being presented to these people, to the crowd. And then he looked even more carefully. He saw that a handle had been chopped off of the wagon. It was like he had been vexed or something. And in this vexation, he searched even more until he found that handle lying at the front of a wall. And now he realized that the pear tree he had seen cut down by this priest was actually the handle off of his wagon. Now, about this great priest, there was no sign of him, but the marketplace went up in a great uproar of laughter. Right? And so this story was an interesting one, and it reminded me of a scripture that talks about how we ought to be careful, or how we ought to be mindful, because many of us entertain angels unaware. And what it's talking about in that particular passage is it's about hospitality, especially if you're someone that has plenty or you're in a position to help, right? It's talking about not forgetting to entreat one another, strangers, right? And when we do that, it's like sometimes you never know whose company you're in. And I feel like this story is like an encouragement not to look at people with prejudgment, right? Because of course the priest approached this businessman in tattered clothing. He was a priest, but he didn't look appeasing, apparently, to the eye. It sounds like. And many times that alone is enough to cause us to turn up our nose at people, or even make certain assumptions. Those assumptions may cause us to think that we are better because we have a certain type of clothing, or even because our clothing is clean, or we have a certain name brand attached to our clothes. It's measuring worth according to materials or appearance. But this story is an encouragement, and a good one at that. It's a good lesson, I think, for all of us, especially for this businessman, apparently, about compassion and looking at all people in the same way without measuring in any kind of way. Certainly not according to materials or possessions or appearance, but it's an encouragement to have compassion and integrity and dignity, and understand that when we run across people or we encounter people, like, there could most definitely be a deeper significance behind that meeting. There could be a significant meaning, deeper than it appears to be, deeper than we realize. And I feel like this could have been an angel, right? In this story, showing up to teach a lesson. We could be entertaining angels in our everyday life. There could be angels in our presence without even realizing it. But because we've prejudged someone by the way that they look or smell or by what they have or don't have, we never know. But there's possibly a deeper aspect of the story, like this one. There's a bigger picture, a larger calling to love, to do good when we have the opportunity, and to not to give up, especially in today's world. Like, everywhere you look, it's almost hard to do. I understand, because it almost seems as if everybody is scheming. Everybody has an angle or a plan or a, what can I get out of this person or out of this situation? And so in many ways, we've almost become a little bit discouraged and very distrustful when it comes to carrying this type of energy, instead of encouraged to do it today. It almost seems that kind of way because of the times that we're living in. But it's still a reminder, a very valid reminder, not to take life for granted. And hospitality is always just a good way to show that love still exists. It's always nice to just be nice, even in situations where you feel like you're not sure. Like, I always take a moment to think and ask my higher self when it comes to pouring out and giving of what I have. I tend to be an overgiver, so I have to be really careful. There's no shortage of opportunities to do good, and there's no shortage of people in need. All you have to do is pull up to a gas station, and there's an opportunity to do something, to give, to do good, to extend yourself. And I've developed this way of thinking when it comes to giving, because honestly, you can almost be discouraged just looking at the situation, because in the back of your mind, sometimes you're thinking and you're saying, well, why should I attribute, to someone who's just going to take it and run and, squander it, right? Because in our mind, we're saying they look like they're addicted to something. So why would I give them something when all they're going to do is go and spend it on something, some nonsense? But we never know. We don't know their situation. Honestly, just like this man didn't know this priest situation. They could be in that situation asking as a result of addiction, but it doesn't always have to be. And so I've learned to adapt the thought around that. When I decide to give, it's about releasing that blessing or whatever it is I'm giving, but it's about releasing the control around it as well. It's not a gift if you're trying to control what the person who you're going to give it to, you're trying to control what they're going to do with it. That's not a gift. And so when I give, I've learned to release it and just say, well, there it is. I did my part when I'm led to give, right? Now it's up to the creator source. It's up to God. However you see your higher source, that energy for you, it's up to source to direct that person who received that. But my end, I've been obedient. I've been hospitable. I have sown good energy. Because we never know who we're entertaining. And that's the truth. We never know. We could be, in fact, just like this man in this story. It could kind of like be a test of the heart, sent by God to reveal the bent of our heart, to reveal the nature of our being, of who we really are. And we actually see this all throughout stories and folklore, things like this, where beings appear and we don't really understand the nature of it. This is a story from China, but I feel it's definitely worthy of discussion in all aspects of our existence. It's worthy of our attention because we don't know who's even standing next to us in the grocery store. We don't know. In this time that we are in right now, we could be sitting next to somebody from a whole different universe. We don't know. We're just in that reality right now. And so, nevertheless, this is about the energy of hospitality. That's what we're talking about here. The energy of love, of kindness, of bringing back that level of humanity to our existence. And so I found this as a very beautiful story. I enjoyed it. And so it's just a reminder to be kind. It's just simple. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. Until our next story, be kind to someone. Never know.